Hello, everyone. I've joined a minute early so I can ask Natasha to join. She is, and she writes a bi weekly newsletter, and the author of this wonderful book, which of course goes back to front to you, called Conversations on Love. And I hope she's going to join me very soon. We're going to talk about what led her to write the book. And sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. She probably hasn't quite arrived. Invited. There we are. So I hope you'll ask lots of questions. I wonder how all of you are. Do you want to learn about love, and where are you with all of that? So I really look forward to this conversation. Natasha is unable to join. I've had much more problems with this recently. I do not know why. I'll try again. There she is. So
Hi.
good. Hi, lovely to see you.
Sorry, mild panic there because you invited me, but it wasn't coming up. So we've done it. We've done the hard.
We've done it. I loved your book.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
It's
you.
a wonderful book. It's a rich book. The sort of combination of your personal story and relationship with love in all its different forms, with yourself, with men in your life, with finding men, then with your husband, and you know, having babies, but then all of these amazing people that somehow you managed to get them all to talk to you, all the big people.
Well, I think that people always say to me, why do you love love? And I'm like, everyone loves love. I'm not. I have to apologize, by the way. My baby's just going to sleep. We're running a bit behind in this house.
Hear her.
About to go. Yeah, I think everyone loves love, and I certainly found in a lot of interviews.
That isn't true. Not everyone loves love. People are terrified of love. It's a risky business, love.
I think that writers and psychotherapists, who are the two people who I'm into, spend a lot of time already thinking about this topic.
Yes,
they were definitely, I was surprised by the amount of people who said yes. But perhaps I was also targeting people who I knew would be fascinated by the topic as well, and who I hoped would enjoy going a bit deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, oh, I wish I'd been able to say something. So do you want to, another time, do you want to introduce yourself and say what led you to write about it? And then we can kind of go into more of what you discovered in this wonderful book, Conversations on Love. And that I will interrupt you because I've asked our people who've joined us to ask questions. So, which would be really nice to be able to have a conversation.
Yes, way. Well, so I am a journalist and now author. And just anyone who is not familiar with the book, it's a combination of a personal quest. So me, sort of, I'm so happy that as an expert, you say you enjoyed this book, because I'm really coming at it from a point of somebody who is not an expert, who has made a lot of mistakes, and really who for a long time, I felt like I was getting love wrong. And I certainly felt like with my career, I could try really hard and make things happen, with my health. If I was good, I could put in the time and go to the gym. And it was just at the beginning of every year, looking at my life, it was the one thing I was like, why is this always the area that I feel I'm failing at and I can't do anything about? So I came at it from that point of view, just wanting to know why did I feel I was getting it so wrong for so long? And why do I really know so little about this thing that's so important to me? So that's sort of where I began. And I was sort of writing about some of those formative experiences and missteps and
And that was with boyfriends, wasn't it? With relationships that went on for too long.
Yes.
Where you weren't really yourself, where...
Well, also in, you know, maybe relationship is not quite the right word for them now, just sort of, have you listened to the amazing Sweet Bobby podcast?
No, never even heard of it.
There was it's kind of about like a catfishing situation, but a therapist on there was talking about how when you have some sort of hurdle in a relationship, like she was talking in this instance, they hadn't met, that maybe like you can't quite ever be together, or there's just some sort of obstacle you've created, like a lot of tumultuous love stories that we all grow up with. It never kind of graduates past that intensity into like a real calm intimacy. It's sort of kept in that intense, just obsessive period, because you never quite get to build the foundations for it. So I think that was more where I was stuck with some of those crushes.
And as you discovered, or what I understood from you, and you can put me straight, is that you didn't feel really known. You know, one of the definitions of love is being known as you find yourself to be, with all of your imperfections, strengths, weaknesses, vulnerabilities, fault lines, furies, and that you never felt safe. Can I just add a question? So, and I think
Yeah.
Caitlin Anna said, I love the conversations about love after loss, particularly death. I would love to hear more about that. And we can talk about that from your perspective, because that's in your book too.
Definitely. But just going back to your point quickly before we move on to the losses, I think I did feel that, and I would often at the time be like, that man never, you know, asked me who I was, or he never understood me. But I realized later that it was actually more my responsibility, that I wasn't really being, you know, I was too afraid.
You didn't show yourself.
Exactly. And I was actually almost doing, you know, masking things and not saying how things I was worried about or feeling anxious, because I was just always so afraid of losing the relationship, that it was more important to try and, which of course does the opposite anyway. But so no, I wasn't known, but I also wasn't telling anybody who I was.
Yeah, I mean, that's the iterative process, isn't it? That it wasn't that they didn't try and know you, it's that you didn't open enough intimacy to show all of who you were for them to be able to move towards you, to get to know you, because you were frightened. You know, you asked this question, is love stronger than the fear of abandonment, I guess, really? And felt like a lot of what scared you was that if someone really does know me, they'll leave me.
Yes, and I approach relationships from the idea of, if this, you know, it sounds ridiculous now, but I really believe this at the time, that if this one relationship ends, then I will be alone and miserable forever. And it was like, everything is on this. I'm, you know, never going to meet somebody as amazing as this again, and just really idealizing that person to such an extent that I could never meet anybody this wonderful again. And actually the line, it wasn't somebody I'd interviewed, but I'd interviewed him for the newsletter, was Frank Tallis. I don't know if you...
Yeah.
And he said to me, you know, I would always say, you know, I remember this to my friend saying, I feel in my bones, I love him. I just have this feeling. And he said to me, sometimes when we don't have any real evidence of intimacy, like there isn't really a relationship, you haven't got a day-to-day consistent communication or affection from someone, your mind sort of believes it's even more wonderful, because you haven't really got anything in reality to base on, so you make it up.
It keeps you hooked, keeps you kind of pulling in, because it's, you know, the power of not knowing, that's so mysterious, and it kind of keeps you seduced, really, to some extent, great extent.
And I think now it would have been a good exercise to try and write stories about those relationships when I'm in them, because you need a lot of plot, and there wasn't much plot, because most of it was in my mind more than in reality.
And so what did you learn? I mean, I'm a huge fan of Stephen Gross, and I'm a huge fan actually of all of the therapists, and I don't think we're experts on love. I mean, I think I don't think therapists are experts, really. I think they're human beings who are good at building relationships. And as Stephen Gross says, therapy is about helping your client understand themselves rather than having answers. But I must say they came up with some very good responses. So do you want to say about what Stephen Gross felt about love? What was he what was his
Well, so I was speaking
long term?
So actually I should explain to anyone as well. So I
Okay.
tried to, it was about, we went on a long tangent, but so it's divided into 3 sections, which is finding love, sustaining love, and losing love, which is really about how to find meaning and continue, you know, survive really after losing love. And that's the section that I interviewed Stephen in. And he really talked about how, you know, I found it was really interesting. He said we talk to children about love all the time, but we don't talk to them about loss, which is actually a big part of love.
The other side.
Exactly. But it's not, it's almost not just they're so sort of interlinked with each other.
Yeah.
You can't separate it. And something he said to me, obviously we do talk about bigger losses like grief and divorce, but he spoke about the everydayness of loss and how even from the very beginning, you know, I have sent my toddler to nursery, which was something I found so much more difficult than I ever thought that I would. And he says, you know, you let them go out of the home so they can meet new friends, just as when we have to leave our hometown and all our school friends, we go to meet university friends. And at every stage of life, to let new love in and new experiences, we have to be comfortable with that loss too.
It's part of the contract, isn't it? Where, you know, where you have love, you have loss.
And that's why I think love is, you know, it does take so much courage. And, you know, one of your questions was, is love bigger than than uncertainty? Which is kind of a big question I'm trying to answer. And what that made me see is, it is, if we choose it in that moment. Like for me, choosing love in uncertainty, like of loss, or, you know, for me not knowing whether I would ever find it, it's so difficult. You know, it's so easy in those moments. The uncertainty can block love, but if you can choose it, then it is stronger. So yeah,
if you dare, it's like loving is a risky business. And
yes.
And daring to take that risk, to really choose it, and not have control. I guess that was one of the things about what kind of blocked you from really being in relationship, wasn't it, initially? That you didn't have control and you somehow wanted to have control.
But, and it's so hard to write about this, because in a funny way, you both have less and more control than you think, because you can't obviously control how your love story pans out, but you can. Like, one of my favorite quotes in the book that I think about almost every day is Sheila Hetty was talking to me about, she was talking about it in the context of motherhood, like the choice not to have kids or not. And she said, it's not really the choice that makes your life meaningful. You apply meaning to whatever you choose. And so you could have children and have a great life if you really committed to that choice, and you could not have kids and have a wonderful, full, happy life if you committed to it. So I think, you know, for me, the sort of parallel when I realized that I needed to really rethink love was that I, you know, was obsessed with a romantic relationship, and in my head, if I had that, I would never overlook
everything.
Exactly. And then it was sort of scary to me when I was trying to conceive after a miscarriage. Suddenly it was almost like, well, I will only be happy if I have a baby. And then I was like, oh, hang on, I hope was
I'm
like
doing the same thing.
Almost the emotions. I was like, this feels so familiar to me. And I'm, you know, if I told my younger self that I would ever overlook romantic love, I never would have believed it. But I think it is much easier to pay attention to love when it's not there, and then when you have it, it's very easy to just be longing for another form of it before you know it.
And I think that is a very big message all through your book, isn't it? Is to pay attention to the moment, that moment, a sweet moment with your husband, with your friend, with your child, or that moment of love. So instead of constantly trying to fulfill this romantic thing of all the fairy stories and happy ever afters that we kind of dream of, but in the reality of loving and the commitment and the meaning that we bring to it is being in the moment with it and noticing and acknowledging it, and responding to what's in front of us rather than what's in our imagination. Does that sound right?
Yes, it is. But I was just thinking, as you were saying that, I think I started thinking, yes, we need to pay attention to those sweet moments, and which is definitely half of it. But I think for me now, it's also when the moments are difficult, or when you have those moments of disconnection, almost not fearing those. And I mean, I did approach this project thinking, right, how can I never resent my husband, and how never grow distant from my friends, and what can I do so I can be a wonderful sister and daughter, and I
get it perfectly right.
Exactly, avoid all the mistakes. And now actually I find those periods of disconnection or difficulty, sort of the way you find your way back to each other in those moments, almost the deeper love. And so it's not just paying attention and being present in those wonderful, but it's, you know, it's really like, I had something, my husband and I having a rough month for no serious reason, just, you know, stacks of challenges, and it's almost, my gut will still be sort of compete about who has it harder or resent, and it's
the
just
lack
sort
of sleep when you have a baby. It's all about sleep, right?
Who's winning? What I was up at this time, I was like, no, you know, it's ridiculous. But I think it's just taught me to just catch the first thought and just really, who's this for? You know, is this kind of coming from a place of love, or who's, you know, who's this serving? And it just has made me catch myself more in those moments. It's like the first reaction you normally have to ditch, and then try.
So more thoughtful, and in a way that connects to Esther Perel. So she was talking about, you know, love is action. It isn't the romance. It's how do I show my love? How do I do love in action? Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yes. Well, the line that I again think about all the time is, she said, because I did used to think, oh, well, if love is action, you could just
write little notes and
but she really helped me see it's like showing the intention is what's important. And so she had said, a client said, if someone says I love my partner, well, she's like, well, that's great, but how do you show it?
How do you show it? Yeah.
And I thought, oh, it's just about them receiving that kind gesture. But of course it's not. It's about them knowing that you've thought about them and then you've actively done something. So it's just always thinking how you show the intention.
Yes.
And of course it's sometimes maybe doing something that you don't want to do. And obviously not in a way that you compromise. I'm not talking about something big here, but just putting that person before yourself sometimes. And I think that's what I'm saying about control. When you do realize that love is a choice in that way, yes, none of us can kind of, you know, control when you're going to meet someone, or control where your friend's going to move to and how close you're going to be. But you do have that choice to contribute to love. And I always thought it was something that happened to me more than, you know, I guess I was just more concerned with receiving love rather than embarrassingly thinking about giving love.
I think that's a really interesting kind of insight, in the sense that, you know, we can influence some things, but most of life is of the things that happen we can't control, like a pandemic, or if somebody gets ill, or but we do have a lot of agency about our response to what's happened, you know. So in small ways and big ways. So in some ways, I think what you're also talking about, or what I learned from your book, is that loving is using our best selves with intention to rupture and repair. you know, where you love most, you hate most. Because it's risky because you've got most to lose.
I've said that line.
What? You saw that line in my book?
Yes, I circled that line in your book.
Yes. Because it's the riskiest thing that you can do, but also it's where you get most. So I think what I'm understanding from you is that we need to have insight into what's going on in us to have the second response and not the first response. But and sometimes, as you're saying, you know, we become very needy, wanting love, but also being able to actually receive it, because you get so busy wanting it, you don't actually take it in and notice the small, sweet things, but also give it in the small, sweet things.
Yes, and I think for me, you know, I'm embarrassed looking back of how egotistical my approach to love was, because I think I was so fixated on this love that I didn't have, that it made it quite difficult for me to be giving to people, especially who I thought had everything, you know, friends who I thought had everything I wanted, without really seeing them as people who also had, you know, whoever, you know, I was thinking about friends who had babies when I wanted a baby, and I found that very difficult. But
painful, yeah.
Assuming though that they, just because they had a baby, everything in their life was
perfect,
and actually maybe they had struggles with a parent or these other things, and I think that for a long time it did block my ability to give love, and that's why I had to rethink that. But what you were saying before, I think, with the Esther Perel and the choice, really I wanted the book to be also a bit of a love letter to trying, because I think that was the biggest thing. I actually was just really ashamed to try at love. And at the beginning, when I was saying my career was good, you know, I could do things in my health, but I think I saw friends meet somebody at university or at a job, or just happen quite easily. And so I thought, why should I, you know, I'm embarrassed that I have to sort of try and sell myself on a dating app, or, you know, what does it say about me that this hasn't just happened, that I have to put active effort into it? And I just felt really embarrassed about that at the time. Now I think,
what was I thinking?
So much and I thought I could just sit there and do nothing. And of course there are some really lucky people who have these serendipitous meetings, but I don't think it was even so much about, I met my husband on a dating app, so yes, there was that effort, but it was switching it in my head from, okay, why is this not happening to me, to like, okay, if this is something I really care about, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to be brave enough to say, I would like this and I'm going to try at it? And it's the same now in friendships, especially as kind of lives are changing more, not just saying, oh, it's sad friends are drifting. It's like, well, if this really matters to me, what am I going to do about it? And that came up again and again, just not being embarrassed to try at love.
And that is taking the risk again. So, I mean, let's talk about friendship, because that a lot of all these fantastic people that you interviewed talked about friendship. And Dolly Alderton, I thought, wrote or spoke beautifully about friendship, that we need to give it a high order, that in, you know, her youth, it was so easy because you were in the same place, having these same experiences at the same time. And then kind of as you get older and everyone has different lives and lives their different lives, that again, it's like you have to make the commitment and the effort, that nothing is without the daring to and the action to some extent, but also the recognition of this really matters. This gives my life meaning. I can't just have my husband and my kids and my job. I need my tribe. I need my people, my village, if you like, of girlfriends, men friends, who I invest the time in, is that I prioritize them.
And actually, I interviewed a psychotherapist who was talking about freedom in friendship, and that's why it's so beautiful, because we do have so much freedom within it, but that also means that we have to sort of force the consistency more when it's not there. And I think that what Dolly was saying, which is really beautiful, is just, it's really about revisiting your vulnerability again and again as you get older, because as you sort of, you know, as things do grow more distant, or you're not kind of aware of each other's, you know, you don't have that everyday intimacy, it can build up more unsaid things or different life choices, and you just have to kind of keep finding a way to just say the vulnerable thing.
And be open so people can fully see you. So the psych doctor, so I think it's not only a choice to initially receive love, but also to give it throughout a relationship. It doesn't just happen.
And maybe even gets harder as time goes on sometimes, just to stop, you know, you don't have as many opportunities to just ask meaningful questions of each other on a day-to-day basis. Or, you know, even me now, I have to say, right, have we talked about anything that's not our toddler for the last, I don't know how long my husband's here, so I have to.
But also Emily Nagoski talking about, who's fantastic, I think, who, you know, at the beginning, you have lots of sex because you're so excited and you're so turned on and you're thinking about it all day and it's your priority. But in a committed relationship, do you want to talk to us about what Emily was saying about?
Yeah, well, she was saying it's not just that it's your priority and you fancy the person, or it's that you feel, or you might feel slightly not anxious but uncertain about the attachment, so you don't feel secure in it yet, and so physically you're almost trying to secure the attachment.
I remember that now. Yeah, great.
Thinking, well, sometimes that might be why you have amazing sex with somebody who doesn't really show you much affection or give you any reassurance, because you're really just trying to close the attachment gap. So it would make total sense that if you're feeling really, really secure in your attachment, that you don't have that urge coming from that place to sort of desperately try and secure it.
Come in. Yeah.
So interesting. And she was talking about how our sort of measure we have of you know, good sexual attraction can too often be, do you feel that spontaneous desire? So before you start having sex, do you just instantly want to do it? Whereas what actually is kind of really, really normal is responsive desire, which is you start having sex, or, you know, it's a desire in response to erotic stimulation. So basically you have to start doing it before you want it. And it was just fascinating.
It's to go for pleasure, isn't it? The feeling of the skin, and rather than orgasm. Or
and not even, because she was saying for some people they do want orgasm, and that can be a goal, but it's more about not judging your sex life by how much you spontaneously want it. And I had written in the book about trying to conceive and sort of having to have that sex all the time, and being surprised sometimes by wanting it after it had started. And I think there's just a lot of unhelpful conversations about maintenance sex, which are really old fashioned, like do it to please the partner or whatever. And it's not that. It's her saying we need to stop judging the quality of our sex on this thing that is not normal for everybody, which I found really, really helpful.
That is really helpful.
A lot of people have been sharing that and writing to me so I think it's inspired lots of people to have more sex, which is great.
And so where, I mean, we're going to need to end in a minute or two. You've obviously, your daughter to go back to, well, she's gone to bed, has she?
Yes, as you could tell from the quiet. Yeah.
What, I guess, if people are listening, what's the thing you most want them to know about what you learned in the book?
Gosh, you know, people keep asking me this. I have a different question every time, because I feel that I dip back into each of the sections almost every day when I need a bit of guidance. But I think overall, it is that bigger thing of, you know, I end the book having a baby, and you know, that was something we wanted and we were so happy. But with that comes another new beginning, more challenges in all different areas of our lives.
And that Stephen Gross thing is that a new beginning is also an ending, and then you start all over again.
Bits of self and work and French, but it's just changing all the time. But as I was saying earlier, I think I've just become a lot less afraid of those challenges and periods of disconnection, or, you know, even bits in a relationship when it's not easy, because I know that you just keep finding your way back to the people you love again and again if you choose love in those moments. And rather than fearing that, I now understand, like, that's what the love is. I used to think the love is what you get when you find a way back to each other, but it's like, no, the love is how you get, it's along the way, it's how you find those ways to reach each other. So trying to be more peaceful about that, and finding meaning in, yeah, reaching, keep reaching everybody I love again and again.
That's a lovely way to end, like, to keep reaching to the people you love, you know, yeah, all of the time, and daring to, I guess, as well, and being vulnerable, yeah, and giving and receiving.
Yeah, and being just humble about that we're all going to keep getting it wrong all the time, and yes, and it's a bigger mystery than even when I started, but that's what keeps it eternally fascinating and eternally interesting.
Well, I mean, I highly recommend this book. I think it's a wonderful book, and congratulations. And I hope you've really enjoyed the success of it.
Oh, thank you. And we'll have to do another one where I can interview you, because I got lots of questions for you.
Okay, well, we can swap. We can, yeah, definitely do a swap. So thank you everyone that joined. And you didn't ask that many questions. So, but thank you, Natasha, and we'll do the reverse.
We'll speak again. That's wonderful.
All right.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.